Well, as I've mentioned, Prime Minister Stephen Harper got together with the world's richest man, Bill Gates, today, and the result was an investment in high-tech and high research related to AIDS. How's it going to work, sir?
Well, it's a package that involves the Government of Canada's participation with the Gates Foundation. It will do several things in terms of developing vaccines for clinical trials. The biggest single initiative will be the construction of a facility in Canada to actually work on the production of experimental vaccines. So it's very exciting, and Mr. Gates, as you know, has contributed a great deal to causes around the world. He has a particular interest in this, so I think it's very fortunate that we're able to leverage this private investment in terms of doing some good public work as well.
Have you been able to forge a bit of a friendship there?
I had not met him before. The government has been negotiating with him for some time. I was able today to spend a little bit of time with him for the first time. I look forward to doing more. It's not the first thing we've done with the Gates Foundation. We also announced some advanced market mechanisms, some funding just a few weeks ago. Minister Flaherty announced some funding for some childhood illnesses. So it's not the first involvement with the Gates Foundation, but it's the first time I got to meet who my wife calls, by the way, the world's sexiest man. Oh. And I said to her when she first said that to me, I said, really, is that true? I think he's the richest, but I never thought of him that way. And Lorene said to me, Mike, she said, when a man has that much money, he's sexy. Yeah, that's what she said.
She's a graphic artist, so she knows all about computers and into all of that stuff. I must say that your polls have been quite remarkable. We've got a poll from the Strategic Council yesterday, which was taken just in the last few days, with very, very strong numbers on leadership. Makes one think that maybe, just maybe, there's an election in the offing. For those who might have missed it last night with Lloyd Robertson, the numbers we'll put up on the screen for you, and you can see there that in the last little while, the Conservatives are up 3 points, the Liberals down 8, the New Democrats no change, and when you look at who will do the best job as Prime Minister Stephen Harper outranks Stéphane Dion by 2-1.
Well, Mike, as you know, I don't comment on polls. I don't tend to put much stock in them when they're negative, so I likewise don't put a lot of stock in them when they're positive. I continue to believe that what the public wants us to do, wants the government to do and Parliament to do, is get on with doing the things we were elected to do. We've been accomplishing some things, but some of the things we're working on in terms of the environment, the economy, democratic reform are only in their infancy, and I think the public wants us to stay here and get those things done, and so that's what I want to do for the next year anyway.
So does that amount then to a guarantee that there's no way you would ever engineer your own defeat to have an election this spring?
No, I've been very clear. I don't want an election. I want to govern. I think that's best for us. I think it's also best for the country. We're going to bring in a budget in March, as you know. Minister Flaherty announced today. I believe it will be a good budget. I believe Parliament should support the budget. And there's a lot of other things I want to do. So, look, you know, as long as we can get things done, as long as nothing's happening in Parliament that jeopardizes the economy or the vital interests of Canadians, we're going to continue to govern.
I want to ask you about a couple of those issues in just a moment, but first, the Ontario number, biggest province in terms of seats in the country, and yet the Liberals under our survey are at 39, the Conservatives are up 2 points, but you're still only at 34. How are you going to turn it around in Ontario? We keep hearing talk about infrastructure, we keep hearing talk about the need for highways and so on. Can you tell us about that big infrastructure announcement you've got in your back pocket that I'm not supposed to know about?
Well, as you know, Mike, the only thing less reliable than national poll numbers are regional poll numbers, which have huge margins of error, and there's different polls out there with different results. This government is determined to treat all regions equally. Whether it's infrastructure, the environment, the eco-trust initiatives, these will be taking place across the country.
So while
I'm confident that, you know, I've told my caucus all along, my cabinet, let's just govern. The people will make their judgment of us when the time comes, when there is an election. And I think at that point we'll be able to make a strong argument in Ontario and everywhere else.
So there's been a lot of focus on Quebec in the last little while, but you seem to be signaling here that when we get the budget on the 19th, there'll be a package in there for Ontario to meet some of those long-standing needs related to highways, transit, and so on. The big
Well, everything we try to do is we try to do it in a way that benefits Canadians across the country. Obviously, we have on equalization, a divisive debate because the interests of the provinces are very different. But the fact of the matter is there's a fiscal imbalance. We're going to try and bring forward a package that addresses, won't give everybody everything they want, but we'll have a principled basis and some transfers to all provinces that we think are defensible and will improve the position of every province.
Now, you've got a series of measures before Parliament that the opposition have opposed in various ways, shapes, and form. I'm happy to report, I'm sure you've had the news run down the hall from the Senate. The Senate today approved in principle second reading of the bill to bring in term limits.
Right.
So they finally accepted something that they've been
they've accepted
on.
The principle. They have yet to actually define the term. We're waiting for that next.
Is that the kind of issue? Or the Kyoto legislation that Mr. Rodriguez brought in? And some people are saying now they're going to go back and bring in the Kelowna Accord and try and use the minority situation to push that through. How long does that go on before it becomes the opposition usurping the government's right to govern?
Well, but the truth is, Mike, with some of these bills, like the so-called Kyoto bill, the Kelowna bill, these bills, the Speaker's rule, don't authorize any expenditure of money. They're just empty shells, they're declarations. I understand the political game the opposition's playing, but ultimately this government is committed to bringing forward real measures, as we did in the last budget, to actually help and make improvements in the lives of Aboriginal Canadians. Minister Prentice, as you know, has brought forward important legislation to give to apply the Human Rights Acts to Aboriginal Canadians. Hard to believe they actually don't. The human rights don't apply to our Aboriginal people today. So we're doing that on Kyoto. We're not going to do anything to wreck jobs or the Canadian economy, but we are going to bring forward, and we already have been bringing forward, meaningful measures to improve emissions of both air pollution and greenhouse gases.
Two other issues that, again, are controversial. The Anti-Terrorism Act. We're expecting a vote this week. Last Friday on this program, Michael Wilson, the ambassador in Washington, said, Duff, if this thing is allowed to lapse, I'll have a very difficult time telling Americans that Canadians aren't soft on terrorism. And today we have a story in the Vancouver newspaper that Paul Martin went to a Sikh banquet or fundraiser where, after being warned by CSIS that this was a terrorist front. How does Michael Wilson do his job if the Parliament will not keep these?
I won't deny that not passing these would hurt us in the United States, but more importantly, Mike, not passing these things hurts us in Canada. The Liberals themselves know that these powers are necessary to safeguard the Canadian population. That's why the previous Liberal government actually brought these powers. It was their legislation that we are simply trying to renew, and I think this is a case where the opposition, where Mr. Dion, for internal caucus reasons, is taking a position to appeal to marginal elements within his party, within his caucus, that do not care about protection of Canada from terrorism. This is a very serious matter. Does it warrant an election? I think the truth of the matter is it's too narrow an issue to fight an election on. But am I concerned that the Parliament of Canada is playing games with terrorism, as they are, frankly, with some of our crime measures? I am very concerned about that.
Finally, and there seems to be, from what I hear here in the halls, a split among Liberals on the crime measures as well. Some people, Liberals, are going to defy Mr. Dion on that and vote in favor of it because they feel it's a big issue that Canadians want dealt with. Finally, on Friday, Condoleezza Rice, the Mexican counterparts, and Canadian ministers are here for a trilateral meeting. What do you tell Condoleezza Rice about domestic Canadian politics when she will see, presumably by then, whether or not the ATA is going to be renewed?
Well, I think the United States government understands. They understand that there's a difficult situation in the Canadian Parliament. But I think that at the same time, the American government understands that the Canadian government is absolutely committed to working together to fight and to prevent terrorism. We've been a good ally in that. I think they understand that. But there's no doubt that the game the Liberals are playing with anti-terror legislation will damage Canada's image in the United States. And that's unfortunate. But at the same time, as you know, this government has at least established a good relation with the United States government so they understand where the government of Canada is coming from, and I don't think that's their principal concern.
Prime Minister Stephen Harper, thanks very much for joining us today.
Great.
Appreciate you making the time.
Thanks for having me.
Stay with us.